Chapter 4. Several hours have passed since Rod and Eric made their escape from the sanitarium. The men continue their route east, toward the mountain range. Most of the trip has been in silence. Trust, in this world, is a deadly currency that no one can afford to give lightly. But under these circumstances, Eric decides to take a leap of faith. At any point, Rod could have left him for dead, but he didn't. That, at least, gives the thief from Orgrimdir a slight comfort, if only to nod off for some well-deserved sleep. Time passes on quietly for a bit, leaving Rod to only concentrate on the road ahead. No reflection or contemplation of past events. He left that to the side for the time being. For now, nothing more than the world laying out before him. Eric soon awakens with a grunt. "Stop the van." Without hesitation, Rod hits the brakes. Eric shoots out of the tarnished heap in a maddening dance. He jogs over to the closest plant, if one could call it that. Nothing more than a simple stem with 2 twigs outstretched, begging for water. Eric frantically unzips his fly and showers the pleading plant. He lets out an orgasmic moan, tilting his head skyward. "Come on, kid, hurry it up. We have several more hours before the sun sets. We need to find a place to hunker down for the night." He gives 2 hearty shakes and pulls the zipper back up from his faded denim jeans. Jogging back to the passenger side, he jumps in and closes the door in one fluid motion. He looks over to Rod and asks, "What happens at night?" "Demons usually come out to play," Rod answers, scanning the horizon. The van has just enough gas to make it to the mountain range, but they won't be there before nightfall. They need to make a camp and take the necessary precautions. Rod spots an elevated portion of earth next to some concrete walls. He throws the van into drive and makes his way over. "So, how exactly do these demons work? And why are they not able to enter Orgrimdir? And how do you know so much about them, for that matter?" "Well, you're full of questions," Rod replies. "I got a few winks, and my brain actually feels like it can function now." Demons are entities from the astral plane, a realm that parallels our own, but they were never meant to exist together. "So why do they now?" Eric always thought the walled city was too massive to ever fully see all it had to offer. But now that he's seen the world outside, Eric is a bit overwhelmed. In some regards, Eric is like a child stepping out of his house for the first time. The initial fear of the unknown gripped the thief tightly, but it was quickly washed away by the wonder of new sensations. This new imagery of the world. Eric can't help but remember his mother after all that he's experienced these past few weeks. Looking up at her when he was only 10 or so years old, still quite naive to the world of Orgrimdir and the city's inner workings. He remembers her whimsical yet stern cackle as she spoke. "Knowledge is power, my little man. And you need to soak up all the information you can if you want to survive this world. It's too unforgiving, and you're just too naive." Her snide words start to overshadow Rod's, and Eric quickly pushes his mother from his mind to finish listening to his new friend. "The cause for this schism has been lost to the past. What we do know is they are weak to light, sunlight being the strongest, but really any light is better than none. So, what if we don't make it to this home of yours? What was it again? Mercantile. Rod corrects Eric. "Right, Mercantile. As for your second and third question," Rod continues as the van rolls to a stop at the ruined wall, "there is something unnatural about that wall. I'd hazard a guess that the wall is the reason the demons can't enter the city, though I've never seen the city myself. Only stories from friends and colleagues." "Colleagues? So what do you do?" Eric asks, surveying Rod's face. I'm a hunter, Rod answers. No shit. A hunter? Eric's eyes widen with excitement. I've heard about you guys. Now it all makes sense. Hunters travel the Wasteland doing odd jobs and contracts, killing all manner of ghastly things. Yeah, something like that. Most people in the city call you guys snake oil salesmen. What do you mean? Rod opens the van door to climb out. Eric follows his lead. Fooling people into this supernatural nonsense for resources? Eric realizes how it sounded and backtracks a bit. I'm not saying it's not true, that's just what other people have said. Though I never saw it myself. The men walk to the back of the van as the sun hides behind the western horizon, saying its farewell for the night. The orange sky envelops the barren region for a bit longer. The wind picks up intensity, blowing up thick walls of dirt and dust around them. Stay out here long enough, and you will, Rod answers Eric brutishly. The anger wasn't directed toward Eric as much as toward the people he's met on his travels. He's wandered the Wasteland for many years, meeting all sorts of curious people. They've ranged from the hopeless to the vile, to the strong and the weak. The majority of the Wastelanders know the Planewalkers existed, having experienced them more often than not. No, it is the more civilized communities that think demons and otherworldly creatures are nothing more than hogwash and old wives' tales to scare their children into behaving. Rod scoffs at the thought. Civilized. Just because someone lives in a more advanced community doesn't make them more civilized. In Rod's experience, it was the more civilized societies that keep him on his guard. At least you know a demon's intentions, Rod thought. A human will smile at you warmly while shoving the blade into your back. What are you looking for? Eric says, interrupting the hunter's train of thought. Hopefully something that will create a fire, Rod says, pilfering through a couple of plastic bins. What about the lighter we found in the front with a box of smokes? Sure. What I meant to say is something to help light a fire, something flammable. Eric walks to the passenger side and slides the side door open. He crawls in and pulls a tote from under a chair. The very seat that brought him to the sanitarium. He stares at it for a second, lost to the thought of his journey here, thinking back to that moment in the warehouse in the slums, all those red dots pointed directly on his chest. He had been played. He still doesn't fully understand why. Sure, my features, but I'm not the only asshole in the whole damn city with blonde hair and hazel eyes. Eric was loyal to the Three Fingers gang, and so was his mother. Again, his mind wanders to his mother. A beautiful woman for the slums. As beautiful as she was cunning. A cutthroat bitch for sure, Eric thinks. I wonder how she's doing. I got something, Rod calls out from the back of the van. Eric comes too. He looks back to see Rod's hand shaking a clear plastic bottle. The hunter closes the back doors and walks to the passenger side. Eric pops his head out as Rod hands him the bottle. What is it? Go on, take a big whiff, Rod says with a smile. Eric unscrews the cap and takes a deep inhale. It's the aroma that hasn't traveled through his nose in what seems like years. Vodka, Eric guesses with a deep, satisfying exhale. Go on, take a drink. Not too much, though. Eric tilts his head back and takes a big swig. The liquor burns hot down his throat. He lets out a fiery cough while handing the bottle back to Rod. The hunter laughs and takes his own sip. You think it will work? Eric asks through his coughing fit. As long as it hasn't been cut with water, we should be able to get a fire going. Eric looks around the barren world. Unfortunately, the thief doesn't see any bushes or trees in the general vicinity. Nothing but dirt, and more dirt. Not much for kindling around here. I found a box of papers in the back we can use. Go ahead and get it going. There's something I need to do first. He hands the bottle back to Eric and crawls under the van. Eric drops to look at him. What are you doing? No answer. As he was about to repeat the question, Eric hears a low hum. He kneels lower, putting his right ear between the ground and the frame of the van. Is he humming? Asking himself. That he is. While Rod hums a tune softly aloud, he begins drawing odd symbols into the dirt. He shoves the entirety of his index finger into the arid earth. Methodically, he carves out a circle. An odd set of letters are drawn at the north, south, east, and west ends of the circle. The pitch in Rod's voice changes with each symbol's creation. Eric can't make out what it is. He's never seen such writing before. He starts to ask, but decides it's best to ask later. Instead, the thief decides to do his part. He scours for about 30 minutes for rocks. He places them in a circle next to the passenger side of the van, then digs a hole within, a pit for their bonfire. Eric walks to the back of the van and retrieves the box Rod spoke of earlier. He builds it as best he can. Taking several pages, Eric rolls them into a makeshift torch. He douses the tip in liquor, then lights it. The flame roars to life quickly. It dances wildly toward Eric's face, showing no discrimination as it gobbles up all available air. Instinctively, he tosses it into the bonfire. It takes only seconds for the box to engulf. Just in time, too. Eric whispers to himself as he watches the last bit of sunlight fade behind the horizon. And like a switch, the sky paints black. The stars begin to flicker high above. Eric is taken aback by the sight. He's never seen so many stars at one time. Truly a breathtaking visage of the universe. At that moment, Eric never felt so small. The humid winds begin to cool as night overtakes the wasteland. Eric lets the wind wipe away the sweat from his skin as he continues gazing at the stars. A presence walks up behind him. Eric turns and is greeted by Rod's smiling face. I got dinner. The hunter is holding a small box of the sanitarium's jelly rations and a couple of sealed boxes that read emergency rations. The men sit under the stars and partake in their dinner. Eric winces at the taste of the black gelatin rations. I now know what death tastes like. It tastes like this shit, Eric scoffs, shaking the wobbly glob. It could be worse. I once spent a month west of the oasis. All I had was worms and my own urine. Eric looks back at the ration. This time not so harshly, as he takes a big bite. Well, with a mouth full of black jelly, it can definitely be a whole lot worse. The men share a good laugh as they finish. With bellies full, the men share in the remaining liquor and a cigarette. Each man sits in silence for a bit, losing themselves to their own thoughts. The wind gusts through the campsite. The fire consumes the wind, pushing the yellow flames higher into the sky. Eric looks at Rod as the fire's colors splash across his face. The hunter is lost in the flame. He's replaying the events at the sanitarium in his mind, reflecting on what he could have done differently to save Tulum. If only I'd gotten there sooner. Rod projecting the thought into the flame. It's not the fire that replies, but the dark one. You did all you could do. Tulum was a drunken fool, and your friend Even more the fool for sticking his and your neck on the line. His choices placed him in that cell. His karma paid that debt. You place guilt where there should be none. What would you have me do? Just abandon a friend in need? Rod rebuts the Dark One's comment within his mind. The Dark One laughs. Yes, it was a foolhardy errand that almost got you killed. And for what? Now you have another mouth to feed. We can't afford to take in every stray you come across. You can't be everyone's hero. It's like I'm a broken record with you. Anger rises in Rod, a hot, boiling feeling burning in his chest. Without thinking, he answers aloud, Someone needs to be. What? Eric questions. The young thief is kind of glad for the unexpected outburst. He's never been a fan of awkward silences. Rod looks at Eric. Nothing. Sorry. Now's my chance, Eric thinks. So, you mentioned the Oasis earlier. What exactly is that? It's home to the Lycans. It's a massive forest to the west of Desert Damnum, the Desert of Loss. You said you traveled to Midland via the train, right? Yes. If you look to the west, just past the horizon is the Oasis. In the middle sits a large body of water, fresh water, and what I believe was the primary reason to go to war with the Lycans. I thought they started the war. Rod lets out a reserved laugh. History's written by the winners, kid. They can paint the picture however they choose. What's it like there? Eric asks. Rod can see by the look in Eric's eyes that it's going to be a long night of questions. He answers, Green and beautiful. Rod tries to visualize the oasis, remembering his time there. As the memories boil to the surface, his head starts to throb. His eyes wince until he pushes the thoughts away, as if someone or something doesn't want Rod to access it. Just then, like some kind of cosmic cue, a frigid gust blows into the campsite. The flame dies down as if to hide from the ominous breeze. The men's ears perk up from a faint sound, a sound of women singing. Rod's eyes dance back and forth as he scrolls through the pages of his mind, rapidly searching for the correct passage. Suddenly coming to a halt as the words begin to take form, creating the name of the demon. Sirens! Rod exclaims, jumping to his feet. Get in the van, now! Startled, Eric fights to his feet and dives into the passenger door with Rod closely behind. The hunter slides the door closed and locks it. He directs Eric to lock the front doors as he locks the back. What the hell is a siren? Eric cries out, looking through the windshield. A ghost that lures men with their singing. They're ghosts of women that have died by the hands of a man, usually a violent death. To seek revenge, they latch onto someone living who's been scorned, feeding off their hatred, usually a woman. Ha, I guess hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, Eric replies with a chuckle. You won't be laughing when they devour you while you're still breathing. They typically start at the crotch. Eric swallows hard and looks out the window again. The singing is not as faint as it once was. They're getting closer. Eric cringes at the thought. Yes, as long as the barrier holds, we'll be fine in here. Eric questions the hunter with his eyes. I drew a barrier spell underneath the van. The sirens won't be able to enter as long as it is there, Rod answers. Well, that's comforting. What exactly were those markings? I've never seen anything like it. They're runes, ancient letters from a time long forgotten. They're the true words of all things. Writing or speaking these runes allow the wielder to control the energy around them. These runes were a gift from Gaia, the planet. How do you know all this? Eric was somewhat mesmerized, but quite skeptical. This whole trip has left him feeling somewhat naive, but ancient words with mystical powers? Fucking hogwash, Eric says, with eyes peering back out the windshield. Rod loses himself to the past for a split second, remembering his old friend. A smile cracks across his lips as he speaks. I learned it from a very dear friend. He was a hunter as well. His name was Victor, but we all called him Gramps. He was an avid researcher of the ancient world. Humph, Eric shrugs. Eric comes back and sits next to Rod. They both listen. The wind picks up, but the campfire holds strong, fighting against the frigid breeze. The wind abruptly stops, as does the singing. The only sound is the men's breathing. Rod looks over at Eric. The thief opens his mouth to speak. Rod quickly lifts his index finger over his lips, signaling silence. Eric nervously nods. They continue to listen. Another noise perks both men's ears. A sound of scratching. A light scratching on the sides of the van. The sound travels slowly up to the roof like twisted little fingers on a pilgrimage. The sounds cease. 3 distinct voices giggle. Come out, little man, says one of the voices. It's female, soft and inviting. Please, oh please, we won't bite, entices another. Only a little, giggles the third. Rod and Eric stay as still as possible. The 3 voices trail around the roof of the van with their fingers scratching across. You can't stay in there forever. Yes, you'll starve, replies the second. And we can't have that, the third voice. If you let us in, we won't kill you, the first voice seductively. The voice sounds much closer than the other 2 voices. The siren sounds like she's whispering directly into their ears. We only desire to play with you. Yes, yes, play with you all night. The second voice seductively scratches against the roof. We'll give you pleasure the likes of which you've never seen. Eric feels as if the third voice is shoving her tongue in his ear. It's wet and scaly. He closes his eyes tightly, trying to fight back the feeling. At first, the touch was coarse, but now is almost orgasmic. Slowly, Eric's head starts to sway as he gives in to the unnatural pleasure. Rod sees the orgasmic expression on Eric's face. The tongue quickly vanishes from Eric's ear as Rod slaps him back to reality. The force knocks the thief's head into the side of the van. He snaps back at Rod. Fuck, thanks. Rod points to the small box of gelatin rations at Eric's feet. Hand me one of the bars. Without hesitation, Eric grabs one and tosses it to the hunter. Rod tears the wrapper in half. He dives his finger into the black goo. Eric looks on as the hunter shoves a generous helping into each ear. Rod gestures for Eric to do the same. The saccharine invitations from the sirens are muffled into incoherent moans. Rod signs to Eric. He looks at him with bewilderment. I don't know what you're doing, Eric yells. Rod waves his hand, signaling to keep it down. He takes the rest of the ration and uses the side of the van as a whiteboard. He writes, Wait it out. Keep the jelly in ears. Shut up. Eric nods. The men get as comfortable as they can in their seats. Rod quickly nods off to sleep. Eric sits in the muffled silence. The only sound is the masked tapping of the siren's fingers across the roof. He closes his eyes and is lost to his imagination. Eric lays there trying to visualize what a siren would even look like. He can't decide if they're like a fog or maybe just translucent. He imagines the fingers go on for miles. A vision of ghostly, skeletal fingers constricting around the van, They're squeezing it, with him still inside. Eric's breathing quickens as his chest tightens. It's then he sees it. He sees 6 pairs of eyes looking at him, dark and evil. The eyes come closer to the thief with harrowing laughter. Eric shoots up from his seat, fighting for every last bit of air. His chest is like ice. He feels his chest. His shirt is damp from sweat. It's okay. It was only a dream. Eric reassures himself as he looks around the van. Rod is still asleep. He rubs his ears. "Oh, shit," he whispers. The black goo has dried up. He knocks the flakes from his ear. Eric reaches for another ration, but stops abruptly. He listens. No sound. Maybe the sirens have left. He eases to the front passenger seat and looks toward the fire. To his dismay, it's out. Eric lets out a sullen sigh. He rubs his eyes, then leans back into the seat in hopes of catching the train to Sleepytown once again. He smiles at the thought of Sleepytown. It's what his mother always called it when Eric was a boy. It's one of the few memories he has of his mother actually acting like a mother. He didn't hate her for it. If anything, he understood it, more now than ever. The world is a shithole, Eric. It's a bad place, and you have to be even badder. You're too much like your father. You're never going to make it. As sleep starts to overtake Eric, a peculiar noise startles him a bit. It's a light tap against the windshield. Just one. He thinks nothing of it and continues to drift. Another tap against the windshield. Then another. Suddenly, a flash of light erupts through his eyelids. Eric jerks awake as he hears thunder off in the distance. The loud clap awakens Rod as well. "Well, I'll be damned," Eric says, gazing as water drops begin to crash against the windshield. "Rain." Eric looks back with a childlike expression at the thought of a good rain shower. He's met, however, with a grave look from his friend. "What?" "The barrier," Rod mutters. Instantly, Eric understood what Rod meant. The rainwater will wash away the barrier, allowing the sirens to enter the van. "Shit! What do we do?" Rod pulls the knife from his pocket and slices his left palm. Blood oozes from the wound as he tosses it to Eric. "Cut your hand." "What? Why?" "Now's not the time for questions," Rod demands. "I need you to use the blood to create a barrier spell within the van." "Why don't we use the jelly rations?" "We don't have any more." Rod pauses for a second, reluctant to finish. He clears his throat. "I was hungry and you were asleep." "You ate the rest of the food?" "Not now. Copy what I'm writing. We have to be quick before the sirens sense that the barrier is broken." Lightning spiders across the night sky. Thunder crashes again, bringing with it a monsoon. "Why didn't we do this to begin with?" Eric, cutting his palm. "It never rains in this area. We would have wasted a lot of the rations. Plus, I don't think you would have believed me if I'd told you." "You're right, I probably wouldn't have." Rod dips his index and middle finger into the red puddle in his palm. He begins to paint the same symbol that was under the van. Eric watches each stroke. He mimics the pattern across the windshield. The hunter finishes the symbol when a horrific screech attacks the men's ears. Eric stops suddenly, masking the sound with his hands. Rod scoots over to the adjacent wall. He fights through the harrowing howls, squeezing his palm to produce more warm crimson paint. "Hurry and do the back of the van," he shouts to Eric. Eric puts the finishing touches on his symbol, then fights over the seats. Another queer shriek comes with the next series of thunder strikes. He trips and falls between the middle seats. Rod pays no mind. Eric smears blood across the cloth seats as he struggles to his feet. A loud thud crashes on the roof, followed by the sound of nails across a chalkboard. "They're here," Eric mumbles as he reaches the back doors. He glances back at the symbol, then frantically mimics it on the right glass window. The thief stops. His face turns pale white with terror as a pair of red eyes stare at him. The back doors fly open. Rod turns to see Eric vanish into the monsoon. "Well, that plan went south pretty fast," the Dark One growls. "Got any other ideas?" "Just one." Rod reaches for the knife laying on the driver's seat. Rod rips his shirt at his chest, then uses the knife to carve runes into his chest. He hums an old hymn to himself, releasing the power of the runic word. Blood flows down his chest in a dark red stream. He drops the knife and uses the streaming blood to paint symbols across his fists. The Dark One lets out a snide laugh. "Carving the runes across your chest is smart thinking. But how do you expect the incantation to stay on your hands? The rain will wash the blood and the runes right off." The Dark One was right. The barrier across his chest will protect him from the siren's possession, but he won't be able to harm the demons if the runes wash away. Eric cries out in pain. "No time, Rod, think." Lightning strikes off in the distance, but close enough to illuminate Eric through the darkness. Two of the sirens have started to wrap around the defenseless thief. A tattered piece of his shirt brushes against his arm. He looks down, and the idea sears hot. It might work. He tears a section and wraps the cloth around his fist, securing it tightly. The hunter scrambles to the back of the van. He leaps out feet first, but is violently shoved back in. Rod is wrapped in a dark mist as he falls on his back. A wicked face forms in the malevolent smoke. Two red ovals materialize over a jagged smile. The siren cackles as it pins Rod to the floor. The demon's fog-like tongue slithers around its lips as it speaks. "Where do you think you're going, man-filth? I'm the eldest, therefore I get first pick." Her long tongue glides around Rod's face as the siren moves in. "When I smelled your aura, I knew I wanted you. You remind me of my brother, strong-willed and determined. I find that both desirable and repulsive. Devouring your essence will please me greatly. You'll understand the meaning of fear when I'm done with you." Rod callously smiles at the siren. "Give me your best shot, she-bitch." The siren's eyes shrink into a scowl as a fist forms from her smoke body. The demon lets out a harrowing shriek as she strikes, and her fist evaporates as it touches the carved runes on Rod's chest. Like a poison rushing through veins, the siren's body starts to fall off in dark, tar-like clumps. It makes a wet, plopping sound as it hits the floor. What have you done to me?" the siren cries. "Gave you a taste of your own medicine," Rod replies. His left hand is free. The hunter lunges at the siren and grabs the demon by the neck. The symbols on his hands allow Rod to interact with the spectral being. He squeezes. The siren releases her grasp. He wraps his right hand around her face. Rod begins to recite another incantation, this time aloud for the siren to hear. "Et ademite omnia peccata vestra, et invenis viam ad lucem." The siren continues to scream as more pieces of her smoke form melts away. She tries to strike the hunter, but is easily deflected from the runes on his chest. Louder, Rod chants, "Deus te diligit," repeating the verse, "Deus te diligit." The demon squeals in a mixture of pain and fear, fighting with all her might to escape this wretched pain. Rod pushes his right palm harder into her brow. "You will not hurt anyone ever again." The siren lets out one last squeal as she fades from existence, nothing more now than a clump of black soot. Rod pulls himself back up and hurries to the back of the van. He leaps out and rushes to Eric's aid. The second siren dragged Eric about 20 yards through the dark, murky mud. The thief gasps for air as the siren howls in laughter. Enjoying your bath, are we, my precious? Eric spots a piece of rock to his left. He reaches out for it, stopping the siren. The demon turns. Oh, precious, are we playing hard to get? Primo, my dear, why don't you play a little song for our precious? The third siren is circling the perimeter like a hawk hunting for its prey. She begins to sing a dreadful melody. Soft and haunting, it starts to soothe Eric. No more jelly ration to keep him safe from the malevolent hymn. His grip loosens. He falls back into a catatonic state of euphoria. Prino, the second siren calls out with a screech. Silence that enchanting song. It's time we start festivities. Eric is still in a catatonic trance. His stare is blank, with a queer smile etched across his face. Prino stops the hymn, still circling high above. The second siren wraps her body around Eric, whispering to him in a soothing voice. It's time to wake up, my dear boy. Come back from the dark dreams of the abyss. Come back to me. It's time to play. The silent ringing in his ears vanishes as the siren speaks, and just like that, all the sounds of the world come crashing into Eric. The crackling lightning, the roaring thunder, the pummeling raindrops, and the siren's cries of delight hit him all at once. Eric jerks up, gasping for air as if he's been dead for hours. Air tunnels into his icy lungs as he falls back into the murky pool. His vision, once blinding white, comes back to his night-blanketed reality with those same red ovals staring back at him. Are we back, my precious? The siren sniggers, sniffing the thief. It's a deeply excited snort, like a dog sniffing a brand-new bone. It slobbers at the anticipation of taking that first bite. Eric looks on, not in fear, but in pity. What could drive a person to come to such torment, such evil? The siren's hands splash into the watery earth, angry at the lack of fear and kicking up chunks of mud. The siren displays her jagged teeth, and Eric can see her black gums. The smell of rotten fish crawls its way into his nostrils. He also notices her anger, yet she doesn't attack him. She wants to bask in his fear. Rod said sirens are women scarred by men. Maybe I can buy myself some time, he thinks. Give Rod time to come up with a plan. Eric fights back the fear, exuding only pity. He looks deeply into her hate-fueled eyes. What brought you to this point? He doesn't realize that he said it aloud, but it takes the siren by surprise. Memories of another life come crashing back into her psyche. A time when she was human, back when her name was Solly. She lurks over Eric with a gaze of disgust. Though it wasn't the man with no name, he would have to do for now. The Dark One in Rod's subconscious comes calling as Rod advances closer to Solly. The Dark One chants to Rod, slowly taking shape. I can feel the darkness in your heart, and I see the scars within, that candle casting the faintest glow. Our merge is eternal. Rod releases control, allowing the Dark One to manifest once more. His dark blue eyes vanish to milky white. Prino sees the hunter from overhead. Her sister is nowhere in sight. The man-filth has taken our sister, she shrieks with a scowl and a hiss. I will bleed you like the fucking pig that you are. Prino shrieks aloud, then darts toward the hunter. The siren dives in with a swipe from her ghostly claw. Rod sidesteps the attack, grabs the tail end of her foggy body, and violently yanks down. She goes into shock as she splashes into the murky water. Prino struggles to get up as Rod slams a boot into her back and wraps her tail several times around his wrist. Without hesitation, he grabs her face with his other hand, then squeezes. Just like her sister, Prino's face begins to melt in tar-like globs. Her screams are muffled as her body dissolves into the pool. As one final measure, Rod picks up the remaining piece of her body and slams it into the ground repeatedly, shattering it into a million pieces. Solly feels her sister's essence violently leave this reality. She looks over as Rod comes racing toward her. The siren cries out in anger and leaps in the air and races toward Rod like a wild beast, galloping with her hands through the water. At the last minute, Rod slides underneath. He lunges his wrapped hand into her chest and pulls as he slides past, ripping a gash from chest to tail. Black, slimy entrails bubble out from the wound and dissolve as they touch the water. Solly continues to fight as her body vanishes from this world. Screaming, she curses the hunter and his young friend.
"I will have my vengeance! I will dine on your fucking bones, you fucking filth!"
She spits up black tar as she gurgles the rest of her cries. Rod stands over the siren, wide-eyed with a devilish smile. "You chose this fate. Dine in hell, she-bitch." The Dark One refuses to succumb until he knows Solly is truly gone. All her thought and anger transfixed on the man with no name. After all this time, after all these men dealt with, the one she truly longed for has slipped through her fingers for the last time. There will be no solace for Solly, no happy ending for this tormented soul, just more regret, stacked onto an endless mound of sorrow.